Hi everyone, this is Suzanne from ScrapbookingSue.com. Thank you so much for joining me today for part 2 of 4 of the Seaside Workshops on the Go scrapbooking kit. So grab your instructional brochure and turn to the pages that say Getting Started in Cutting Diagrams like I have here. We're just going to delve right in and start with our papers. Under the Need to Know section, the first thing it says is to cut the zip strips off all the B and T Duo sheets. So as you can see right down on the side here, there's these 1/2 inch by 12 inch strips. These have patterns on them, colors, sentiments. This is definitely something that you want to keep and use again. We may not use them for these papers today, but we will use them in some of the other projects. And if you have any of my Stretching Your Workshop series, you'll see that we make additional layouts as well, and we often use some of these strips. So here they are. Put them aside and keep them for your next project. Alright, the next thing we need to know is the red lines on your sheet indicate Cricut cut shapes. Have a look here, here, and here. You will see some red line shapes on the cutting diagram. If you are not using your Cricut, you're going to, under the Need to Know section, go to the alternate cutting guide dimensions. So for example, on this desert sand sheet, on J, if I'm not cutting that on the Cricut, I'm going to go under the Need to Know, and it says I need to cut an equivalent piece that's 9 inches by 6.5 inches. So that's what I'm doing here. All of these workshops I'm not using the Cricut for. I do have the Artbooking cartridge. I love it. You probably see it on my blog quite a bit, but we're not using that because not everyone has it. Next we're going on to Colonial White. That is piece C. That is a Cricut cut shape. But if you go to the alternate shapes, you'll see that if you cut an 8 inch by 6 inch piece, you will be able to use that interchangeably on your layout. So let's go ahead and cut that piece. I like to alternate between the top and bottom of my paper cutter. This is kind of an old one. I need a new one, but sometimes it just works better with that swing arm, sometimes the bottom. Okay, the next Colonial White piece, if you have a look at your cutting diagram, K and L have red lines around them. So again, those are Cricut cut shapes, and you'll just follow the directions if you're using your Artbooking cartridge. If not, you'll go under the Need to Know, and it says K and L need to be cut at 5 inches by 4.5 inches. So go ahead and cut those pieces. You can either cut them later with your diagram. You can fast forward my cutting if you don't want to see me cut all these papers. It's just for some people this is the first Workshops on the Go kit that they've had, and they like to get the lay of the land and see how it's done from start to finish. Alright, my Colonial White is done. Next, oh, pardon me, there's another page. We're going to do a little bit more Colonial White. Go on to the F and G. As you can see, one of the pieces on your cutting diagram says Sunburst. Now, unless you want to go in and just freehand cut a sunburst, if you are not using a Cricut cartridge, then we will not have a sunburst shape. What I'm going to do for this workshop is just use a piece of the Colonial White scrap paper, so one of the pieces we're not using, and I will actually be stamping our sentiment in part 3 of the video series, the stamping series, right on the scrap paper, and then cut it out. I won't be using a sunburst shape, I'll just be using a circle. If you have another shape you'd like to use, or you do have access to get a sunburst, then go ahead and do that. You'll need approximately 1 3/4 inch by 1 3/4 inch for that piece there. And again, pointing out the sunburst. And I'm just going to put some scrap paper aside for that. Next we're going on to our sorbet. This also has a red line. It looks like a picture frame, and instead of using the Artbooking, we're just going to cut that. Let's see, it's piece E, so we're going to cut that at 9.5 inches by 2 3/4 inches. It won't exactly resemble a picture frame, but once we start putting our pieces in there, it'll look pretty close. It'll still be a really cute design. Although if you want to have it look exactly like your main picture in the instructional guide, then I highly recommend the Artbooking cartridge. It does so much, including mini books. Alright, so let's finish off this sorbet piece. Journaling mat is the other piece I'm cutting, and you can choose to cut this into tiny strips after, little 1/2-inch strips, and use them as journaling, or you can keep it as one big piece and put it on your page. The actual diagram shows one piece, but the finished project shows little strips, so that is your preference. Here is a piece of the B&T Duos paper. It's the weathered blue. On the other side there's a dot pattern, but for this specific workshop we're not actually using that. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut the dimensions listed for the weathered blue paper. We've got 3 cuts for this one, and there's no Cricut cut on there. We're almost done with the blue, and then we're going to move on to the stripe paper. The stripe paper is absolutely beautiful. I just love all of the colors in it. Alright, so one more cut. You can always fast forward this at any time if you don't want to watch the entire cutting process. Okay, let's go on to the stripe paper. If you have a look at the finished layout, the stripes are actually going vertically down the page. So to get the vertical cut, we're going to have to place the paper in horizontally like this. And see, when I laid out, it's vertical stripes going up and down. Now I just need a 1/2 by 6-inch piece. So I'm just going to go down to the 6-inch mark right here, not cut all the way down my page. Just to 6 inches, flip it over, and cut that remaining 1/2-inch piece to get that tiny little strip that I need for my layout. Alright, oh, it's a little stuck. Let's pull it apart. And there we go. There's my final piece. Now, if you purchase this workshop from me, I have some bonus files for you to create 4 more layouts. So pause the next slide and have a look where you can get this workshop, and I'll see you in part 3, stamping.